Hello, everybody, and welcome to Game Changers. I'm excited because my guest today is somebody that I kind of have known peripherally for a while, but haven't really talked business with. Hi, Jay.
Game Changer.
Okay, I have. There we go. Welcome, Jay.
I see you, but everybody sees both of us, right? Is that
everybody sees both? You can't see both of us?
Yeah, no, I see both. I just wanted to. It's so nice to look at you. I don't know if everybody had to look at me too.
They're looking at you. They're looking at you too. And if you behave really well, I'll take myself out of it, and they'll only see you.
You don't want that.
Well, I don't know about that, Jay. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm in the middle of reading your book. Okay, can you tell me, honky in the house? Do you know where the word honky originated?
Yeah, well, I explain it in the book. From my research, honky is an expression that in the 40s when cars came in and white guys would pick up black girlfriends, they'd go into a black neighborhood. They were afraid to get out of the car and go in, so they would honk the horn. The girl would come out. So it's kind of how the honky got. So there's a white guy honking his horn,
So you were the white guy honking your horn at the Jeffersons.
The honky thing, if you watch the Jeffersons, George Jefferson called white people honkies. He was always honky. So being white, I was a honky in the house, in the Jeffersons' house.
Did the actors call you honky?
Well, no.
You were the boss.
Just in retrospect, when I write the book, it's like, being a white guy, that makes me honky. But doesn't seem as bad. I think people today think like that's the white version of the N-word or something. But we never took. I mean, when Sherman said it, I write in the book about what Sherman means by honky when he says honky. And in the Jeffersons, you would have the N-word. We had the N-word a number of times. Generally, it'd be when Sherman or the cast would ad-lib it. And we didn't stay away from it. It wasn't, today everybody's just so afraid of that. Even when they did the Jeffersons live in front of a studio audience, which is the first time they did Norman and Jimmy Kimmel, and
right.
They said at the beginning of the show, we're going to not change a word of the script, But when they got to a certain word, the N-word, they bleeped it out. And Norman had said that they talked about that. I was surprised at Norman because Norman usually was not about bleeping words, but I think the young people that were involved in the show these days, they thought it was you can't say that, and it was a compromise that, well, okay, say it, but we'll bleep it, and rather than cut it up.
Speaking of that, my daughter is very offended by my lack of political correctness. She corrects me all the time. Do your granddaughters?
Yeah. Well, my daughters will correct me, and else, you can't say that, you can't say this. That was the whole thing, though, in the 70s when Norman's shows came on. I mean, he would talk to, when you saw Archie Bunker, when I first saw that show, it just blew me away. Here was this guy saying Spick and Jungle Bunny and Kike, and I said, geez, the words you've heard before, but you've never heard them on television.
We're going to go have chinks. Archie's the only one who ever said we're going to eat chinks.
Yeah,
crazy.
The first one I saw was Archie Meathead. He was talking about a guy he called a chink, and Meathead says, that's a slur. You can't. Says, what do you mean? He says, besides, the guy's not even Chinese. He's Japanese, And Archie says, well, what do you mean? You can tell the difference between. He says, yeah, of course I can tell the difference. He said, if two guys were standing here, you said, yeah, you'd say, which one of you is the Jap and which one's the chink? That was, and the whole thing with Archie, that was something you never remember at the beginning of All in the Family. They would always have a disclaimer, like, get your kids out of the room and
yes,
hear things that you never heard before on television.
I can remember.
I didn't want to write for that show. I said, boy, this is satire. It's satire and it's on TV. And I was coming out of the 60s when, things were all about the war and race and everything was going down. I actually wanted to write relevant comedy. When I came out to California from Ohio, the two big shows were Laugh-In and Smothers Brothers as far as relevant comedy goes. The sitcoms were Green Acres and Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, things like that,
Right.
in 71 when I was thinking I wanted to write for Smothers Brothers. I was writing Smothers Brothers scripts and putting in writing jokes for laughing and stuff like that. Not really, getting hired or getting anywhere. But when I saw On the Family, I thought that's what I want to write.
Those are two of my favorite shows. Share a Little Tea with Goldie. Lee has been a grown-up friend of mine, a recent friend of mine. But that was like the Smothers Brothers was like the greatest thing on television, and as was Laughing. And I've been reading your book, and you talk about all of that. Were you politically active when you were of age?
Well, yeah. I mean, I am proud to say I marched in the moratorium in San Francisco in 71. That was the big march, But I certainly was, anti-war and in favor of the Black Panthers and all the racial stuff that was going down in the 60s.
Did you have a number in the draft? Did you have a number? Was that your time?
Yeah, no, that was an issue. A lot of people went to college to avoid the draft, and then when you get out of college, you get drafted. That's a long story. I managed to get myself. Well, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I didn't actually.
What was your number, Jay?
Well, I don't remember the number. I got out of school right when they had the number thing, and I had a letter from my doctor. I had stomach issues when I was 18, and I had some surgery, and that kind of kept me out. I don't know if you know what ROTC is, but ROTC, sure. Where I went to school, Xavier University, Jesuit College, you had to take 2 years of ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps. You had to wear uniforms and the whole thing. And after 6 months, I knew all the rifle stuff because I had been in an outfit called the Cadets when I was at camp and all that stuff. But I thought that this war stuff is just. I remember when the last ROTC class I went to, the captain who ran the class was telling about the new bullets they have. They hit you in the shoulder. They don't just go through the shoulder. They'll take your whole arm off.
Oh my God!
That's good. Like, this is really good, And I thought, man, I don't know. I was like Muhammad Ali, I don't have any fight with those Viet Cong, Like Ali would say, no Viet Cong ever called me nigger. So he wasn't ready to go over and I didn't know, and so there was a whole feeling of anti-war thing. In those days, you could look at somebody's hair and tell whether they were for the war or against the war. If you had short hair, it was like that. But I managed to get out of, I could tell you a long story about, but anyway, basically, I didn't have to go in. I was ready to go to Canada. In fact, if I got drafted, I was going to go to Canada instead. But
okay, so let's talk about that for a second, because you wrote The Draft Dodger, the episode of All in the Family, which I watched again today, which is it feels almost as relevant because of the idiot in chief that we have presiding in the White House. It was so ahead of its time. And so beautifully written and executed. Was that motivated by your own experience?
Well, certainly the times. I originally wrote a treatment. I went to, when I saw All in the Family, like I told you, I had never been to a taping or anything. My parents came out not long after that. I took them to see a taping of All in the Family. Norman did the warm up, and I thought, this is great. This is what I want to do. I write about it in the book, how I just felt like jumping over the rail and going down and telling Norman, I'm going to work for you. But instead, I went home. I didn't have any TV credits at all, but I knew I wanted to do it. So I wrote a treatment. It's called The Draft Dodger, about a guy. This is a story. And I had an agent who I knew at the time send it to Tandem, which was Norman's company. And in a few weeks, the word I got back was they passed, So that was that. And it wasn't until a few years later, when I actually ended up working with Norman on the Jeffersons. And then the draft at that time, like 76, draft was a big deal because Carter was president, and amnesty was a big question. Should he give amnesty to draft dodgers? So, I thought, maybe Norman probably never saw that treatment. And that I was on the inside, I know nobody reads treatments anyway. So I just my partner and I said, told Norman like to pitch him in All in the Family. So we were working on Jefferson's, but they had just finished the season for All in the Family, so I waited. I knew they would need stories. Pitched the story to Norman. Norman loved it. In fact, as we came out of his office, we just finished that season. He says to J.D. Joe, his secretary, he says, "J.D., Jay just gave us a reason for doing next season." So I've written that. That'll be on my my epitaph on my tombstone. But no, for me, Norman Lear was my idol. For Norman to say that about All in the Family, that was like it's a great thing.
It's huge. Yes. So tell us, Jay. So you were in Ohio, Cincinnati, right?
Right.
And so what stars in your eyes in Cincinnati when what made you want to write comedy? What inspired you?
When I was a kid, I remember watching like Lucy. I love Lucy. Mm-hmm. And at the end, at the crawl, one of the episodes, I was just 10 or something. It said writers, and I'd never seen that before. It was you mean they're right? You mean there are people that write this stuff and hang out with Desi and Lucy? I just thought Lucy and Ethel were funny people or something. And then I thought, that'd be a good job. You could just hang out with them and say funny stuff and write funny stuff and laugh all day. So from then on, it was like, that's what I wanted to do. Write for television.
Were you the class clown? Were you funny when you were?
Well, I guess I tried to be. Yeah.
Were you in school plays? Did you do any of that?
Well, yes and no. I wrote some sketches. I remember in the 8th grade, we did we had nuns and everything at the Catholic school, and we had to write something about communism. So I wrote a thing about communism, and I played the drunk myself, and then I had some other guys play. Everybody, said how bad communism was, except for me. I was just one who was, I like communism. You don't have to go to work, and you take care of you and all this. So stuff like that. In high school, I was in a couple plays, but I had like one line in each of them, and like that.
But you did consider for a little bit trying your hand at stand-up. Is that true?
Well, I always thought I would have liked to do that. In fact, once the Jeffersons, when my partner and I became exec producers, the Jeffersons, I ended up doing the warm-ups all the time. But the big thing, like I think I say in a book, like in the 70s, you didn't get paid anything for doing stand-up. I had a wife and kids. I got married in Ohio and came out here, had 2 kids out here, and plus, the way that whole comedy thing is, you got to start like at the Comedy Store. You don't go on until 1 o'clock in the morning, and the whole lifestyle thing didn't seem to fit, And but I always admired. I went down to I'd hang out at the Comedy Store when I could, and the Improv and the Ice House, and saw all the comics in those days. Richard Pryor all the time, Robin Williams, everybody. It was fun times then.
And so how did you get that initial? I know that you wrote not for TV first. You did some business writing. How did you break into television? How did that happen?
Well, let's see. I try to make it not boring because it didn't happen overnight. I came out here after 4 years. I wrote advertising copy and stuff for 4 years, and I was always focused on. When I went to school, there was no screenwriting classes. There was nothing like that. If you told people in Ohio you wanted to write comedy for a living, I just look at you like you're nuts. But I kind of, that's what I wanted to do. And after 4 years of writing this other thing, the company where I was working was moving to Irvine. And if you didn't, they were moving down to Orange County, and if you didn't go with them, you got 6 months severance. So I thought that's pretty good. I'll take that, and then I'll work on writing. And over those 4 years, I was always trying to figure out, what a writer does, what a director does, what a producer, how the business works. The 3 things I figured out was if you wanted to be a comedy writer, you need a spec script, sample your work, not something you're ever going to sell, but something that shows you can write.
Right.
And you need an agent, because they won't read stuff unless your agent sends it, or you need a partner. So I set out to kind of do those 3 things. And I don't tell you to bore you with how I met Mike Milligan, who we partnered up and we wrote for about a year without actually selling anything. Good Times was the first thing we sold. So we heard from our agent, who we managed to get an agent at the time, Lou Weitzman. And Lou said Good Times just came on the air, was looking for stories. And I'd read a thing in Psychology Today about William Shockley, who was a Nobel Prize winning guy who said that blacks were inferior to whites intellectually, just an innate thing. And a black professor had written an intelligence test called the bitch test, black intelligence, cultural homogeneity, and whatever it was. And white people take the bitch test and fail it, So it was a matter, you pointed out the difference in culture, these tests are kind of, and so the idea we pitched at Good Times was Michael, if you remember the kid on Good Times,
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Carter,
Mm-hmm.
and he was kind of the militant midget, his dad called him. So he refused to take an IQ test at school because they were
Racist.
Yeah, it was exactly. So, and we pitched it to Alan Mannings, who was the exec producer. We didn't. Norman loved the idea. We never actually met with Norman, and then we wrote it. That was our first script that we actually sold. Was a Good Time show.
And so the spec script that you write, is it true that when you write a spec script, you don't write it for the show you want to write for? You write it for another show, correct?
Right, because if you write it for the show you want to write for, the people that write that show are going to tear it apart. You can never capture exactly what you want to say. If you write in those days, like you write a Mary Tyler Moore show, you want to show it to Happy Days or something, because the writers are going to read it. They'll be working all the time. They don't really know the Mary Tyler Moore characters that well. But if you write a Happy Days and give it to Happy Days, they're going to go, well, no, that's basically the way it works. So we had actually written an Odd Couple script in those days. That was our Odd Couple. I think we had a MASH script. Those were our spec scripts,
I read that you didn't really like MASH. You weren't a big fan.
Yeah, well, I wasn't, don't tell Ken Levine, but
I love Ken. I won't tell him.
No, I mean, you have to read the book and you'll see what I say. That's one reason I wrote it in third person, because if Ken says, well, what didn't you got against Mitch? And I say, well, that was Murph. That wasn't me. But anyway, we wrote a Good Times, and that's kind of, it starts like that. And in the book, I explain every step. I think it's, I wrote the book thinking that if I were wanting to write comedy now, I'd want to read a book I'd want to read a book by somebody who said exactly what happens when he comes to Hollywood. And that's pretty much what I tell in the book,
So you got to meet Norman through Good Times, which brought you back.
Yeah, we really didn't meet Norman then. It's interesting. I didn't tell you this quickly. The guys, we wanted to write for All in the Family. Our agent had said to us, you guys belong at MTM. I said, we want to write for Norman Lear. So this is before we had credits or anything. He set up a meeting with Don Nichol, Mickey Ross, and Bernie West, NRW. They were writing for All in the Family. They were the guys with Norman who won all the Emmys at All in the Family. So that was a big day when we got a call and said, Lou said we got it. So we went down to CBS, went to Farmers Market at lunch with Don Nichol, Mickey, and Bernie. We told them we wanted to write for All in the Family, thought it was the best thing on television. And we all had a great time together. And this was when hiatus just started, after they finished one season. So our agent calls and says, they really like you guys, and when they come back, they'll probably give you an assignment or two. And so we thought, though, stupidest thing we ever thought was, while they're gone, we'll write a script. We'll take a month. We'll write a script. We'll knock them off their sections. We wanted to be on staff. We said we wanted to hire some staff.
Right.
Yeah, our agent never should have let us do this, but he handed the script, sent it to them when they came back, and we got a note from Don Nichol, Mike and I, that said, I kind of remember the way it was like, you guys are talented, but All in the Family is not the only pebble on the beach. And that was it. And so it was like, oh, well, that's gone. We'll never work for them. And I could go on from there, but that's how we hadn't met Norman yet or anything.
And so I was just reading when you guys had your first script produced, and you were sitting in the audience.
Yeah, that was good times.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, well, we went to the taping. We took our wives and all, and we were excited. They introduced us as the writers. And we're sitting there the first couple of minutes, so we didn't recognize any of the dialogue. And we're going, maybe we were at the wrong week or something. No, they introduced us. and all of a sudden saw the sign that said "Happy Birthday, Michael," and it was Michael's birthday in our script. We figured, well, you only have one birthday, and we were like 3 lines of it. The story was exactly the same, and the structure was the same, but the lines were different. And the takeaway there was we were going to write on staff, because you realize things get rewritten, And so from then on, it was like, we're looking to write on staff. We wrote a couple of shows after that, for That's My Mama. I don't know if you're that far in the book yet. And I don't know if you want me to go on, but that's
yeah. So go through so how did you guys get to be staff writer? How did you go from?
Well, and That's My Mama, we weren't really staff writers, but they gave us an office after we wrote one script and pitched them a second script, and they liked it. And they found out we were writing in a motel together. They said, "Why don't you guys come?" And so it was kind of felt like being on staff, but it wasn't staff. So after That's My Mama, I think we wrote a Maude before we wrote Jefferson. We met with Schiller and Weisskopf. We still hadn't met Norman. And the Jeffersons now became, Don, Mickey, and Bernie, Nickel, Ross, and Wes, they created that show, and Norman had them running that show. And their first season was in the spring. It was like a 13-episode season, And we watched Jeffersons, but we actually got a letter, I think because we were probably on some list because we wrote a Good Times, because our agent called and said, you're invited to pitch if you want to pitch to Jeffersons. And so we did. We went in and pitched to the story editors, Lloyd and Gordon, at the time, Lloyd Mitchell and Gordon Turner, or Gordon Mitchell and Lloyd Turner. And we pitched the story. I'd read in Time magazine that about adopted kids tracing their parents, which was a big thing at the time. It was new that you could actually try to trace your parents.
Right.
And we applied it to the Jeffersons and said, well, what if Gal shows up at the door and says to Louise, that's you're my mother, and it happened to be when George was in Korea at the time that the kid was born and all. So we pitched that to them and they liked it. And Lloyd and Gordon's story editors said, "We'll let you know." They went and pitched it to NRW, and then they called us back and gave us notes. So we wrote the first draft, and then Don Nickel called an agent and wanted to meet with us. NRW, and we went down to meet. And that's the first time we saw them since this lunch, right?
Right.
And Gordon and Lloyd weren't in the meeting, and it was just NRW and us, and we thought, we don't know if that's good or bad, but they're going to give us notes. And he said, we like the script, and we want to move it up because, we're going to shoot it as our third script for the second season, whatever. But then they never said like, hey, we see you guys again, nice lunch, and we didn't say anything. They were just focused on a script, and we just went to work. And it was really, then they hired us on staff. So that's how we got on staff. Yeah.
So
I have my coach here telling me not to get in the weeds.
When did you meet Norman? How did you find?
Well, that's an interesting story too. When we started working with Don, Mickey, and Bernie, they were like, Norman kind of let those guys more freedom than any of his other shows because they would work for so long. But they were still clearing stories with Norman. So they took us up a couple times and we met with Norman. And Norman, after we met with him next day, Don said, Norman likes you guys. And that meant a lot just to hear that. So we pitched, I've read in Ebony magazine. In those days, Norman did issue-oriented comedy, so you could look at a magazine and see what was going on. And I read in Ebony magazine that suicide, the highest rate of suicide in the country was among Black women. And so, I thought Florence is a maid. She wasn't a regular character on the show yet. Mm-hmm. So we went to Don, Mick, and Bernie, and Mike and I, we pitched them the suicide thing. And they didn't want a suicide, like, you guys daft, And it's funny because when they left All in the Family, they had done all these shows. And I think they were now these are the guys who created Three's Company later. So they were in a frame of mind that, they just wanted light stuff. Company. And so they didn't want to hear all suicide. They said, come back with something else. So we came back with some other couple ideas. And two of them they kind of sparked to, and they said, okay, you guys go pitch those two to Norman. Mm-hmm. So we went out and pitched two ideas, to Norman, and Norman was like, well, not really. He said, you got anything else? And so I said, I was reading Ebony magazine and Black suicide. Oh, Norman, love that. idea. Norm, Florence said, "Oh, Florence, yeah, the help brings problems into the house," and it's all in the book that I write.
Mhm.
So now he's loving the show that our bosses hated. So we got to go down and tell them. We go down, Mike and I, and they say, "How'd it go, Norman?" And so we tell them that, boy, it was like a wall. No smile. The three of them.
Oh.
Don just says 3 words. He says, "Go write it." It was like a dare. They didn't talk to us for 2 weeks. When we went to the run through, and we got nose and glasses and wore the nose and glasses. I mean, we didn't know what facial expression to show, because if they see a smile and it's like we're cocky or something because we went around their head, and if they see us sad, it's like, or you don't want them to see worry, like, oh shit, we'll never make this funny. So they for 2 weeks though, we wrote this first. We did some research, wrote the first draft. Norman, by the way, gave us the beginning when we were meeting with him. He was saying, she's cleaning everything. Florence was a character who George is always criticizing, so he opens with, she's happy, she's cleaning. And he was right. When a lot of people, when they decide they're going to kill themselves,
Mm-hmm.
she's made a decision. She's going to see God, and it's all, no more problems. Meanwhile, she's going to. So anyway, we wrote this script. Gave it to Don, Mickey, and Bernie, and waited. 1 day, 2 days, didn't hear anything. Third day, Mike and I are ready to pack up our desk and write a suicide note or something. So I said, hell, I'm going to go down. So I went down to Don and I said, "Get a chance to read the script?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Not bad." So for Don Nickel to say not bad about a script, I ran back to Mike. I said, he said, "Not bad." So we shot the show, and it was pretty much like it was written. It was great.
Wow.
In fact, it had so many laughs. It was the one show I talk about in the book. The engineers didn't even sweeten. They didn't realize that it wasn't sweetened. We just had natural laughs, and it was a typical. I have to salute Norman. I mean, one, because he wanted to do a show like that, and two, because he really. That's what I learned from watching All in the Family the first time I saw it. That you could have a show, you could blend comedy and drama, and I never thought you could do it. I thought comedy was comedy and drama. He showed you that. You could be laughing 1 minute and tears in your eyes the next. That was a revelation for me as a writer, So I always wanted to do that kind of thing. And now, if you look at what I write about the Jeffersons and our stories and stuff, we Mike and I tried to have, cogency and comedy is what, when the review and TV guide of the IQ test, whoever wrote that review said it had a nice blend, that episode of cogency and comedy. And I thought that would be a good goal for us to, our brand will be cogency and comedy. So
I love that. I noticed on IMDb that it credits you and Norman for writing The Draft Dodger. Did he have a part in that process?
Well, yeah, sure. Norman had a part in The Draft Dodger. I mean, he did. And so, we went and pitched the thing. I told you that was in the spring, and we could have gone and started. Well, we knew that whatever we do now is going to get rewritten and rewritten. We're just going to wait till it gets close to the fall when they're going to shoot this thing.
Right.
And then we met with Moore Lockman, who was the executive producer. All in the Family had their writers. Moore Lockman was the head of that show. And we met, actually, Mike and I met with Norman again before we started writing. And Norman, if you read it, it's all in the book. But Norman mentioned Archie's friend, the Gold Star father, is at dinner. So Archie's friend was Pinky in All in the Family. And Pinky has a friend who died in Vietnam. So Archie's going to have dinner at the bunker house with Meathead's friend who's from Canada, come down for Christmas to visit his mom. He's a draft dodger. He ends up at Archie Bunker's place. And then also Archie has this friend whose son was killed in Vietnam. And the first thing I thought was, well, that's pretty coincidental. Is that really too much? And then it hit me as like, well, geez, why didn't we think of that? That was Norman's big contribution to that show, which makes for the scene you saw. But then, after we wrote our draft, of course, the All in the Family guys, they took their shot at it because that's the way these things work. So, but certainly Norman and others in All in the Family had some. I think that the script wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but the actors really made it great. You watch it was stuff between Carol and Rob Reiner and Gene. It was just I actually, as I write in the book, I sat next to Nancy O'Connor at the original taping that you watched today, and tears were running down her cheek. This is Carol's wife.
Oh,
That was an emotional show. And
very.
they
What a beautiful ending. I'm not going to give it away, but what a beautiful ending. Oh my God.
Yeah. I know Cindy Beagle, who I have to shout out to, had mentioned she said, be sure to mention when you talk to Vicki about the goddamn that was ad-lib in the show. I don't know if you've gotten that far reading in the book.
No, I don't know about that.
You watch the show, originally when we taped it, Carol ad-libs goddamn war. So he says, I'm not talking about that goddamn war. And the network said, got to take that out. And Norman said, no, we're going to leave it. And Carol insisted that they leave it because it was really an emotional thing. It was just ad-lib. And it really, the audience at that point was just, but the network insisted. I got copies of the, network note in the book and everything, but they insisted that and said, Norman tried to argue like, well, you can't say goddamn war. What can you say? And they say, it's the word God, anything said, anytime we have God in any kind of possibly sacrilegious form, we get letters from everyone. That's the one the network stayed away from. Carol O'Connor actually flew to New York to see William Paley, who ran CBS at the time, trying to talk him into leaving that goddamn. Long story short, we ended up taking it out. It had a fly-in Rotterdam. So if you watch the taping, now you can see his lips say goddamn, but it matches. It says Rodney. I'm not talking about that Rotterdam war. But it didn't hurt the show. You wouldn't know it unless they told you probably. So.
Well, I didn't know it was supposed to be in there, and I thought the whole episode was brilliant. But now that you've said that, I want to go back and watch it. Where is it in the episode?
Right at the climax when he finds out that he's having dinner and his son dies having dinner with a draft dodger, and Archie goes nuts. He wants a draft dodger out of there. And Edith says, let him stay. And he says, Edith, we're going to, the FBI will be coming here and throw it, says, Edith says, we don't have enough food for them. So you're trying to combine this. But it was at that time in 76, that was an issue. People were on both sides of it. In fact, we got letters, and I print two of the key letters we got. We got all kinds of letters, and they were 50-50. I thought after watching that show, you're going to be siding with Rob Reiner. You're going to be siding, giving the draft dodgers amnesty. But we got, 50% of people said, right on, Archie,
wow,
throw that guy out of there. And the other 50% was saying, I was really moved and whatever.
Wow. So it's true that you would look at magazines and newspapers to get ideas for shows, because writing.
We got a lot of ideas, yeah. And it works there because, if you were doing another kind of show, certainly like MASH. One thing MASH, at the time it takes place in the Korean War. It's in the 50s or something.
Right.
No black people in it. Black people were a big part of the 60s and the 70s.
Right.
And they're I say in the book, it's just these wise guy frat boys who are, you wouldn't look in the paper for ideas about, maybe you look in the 50s and Marilyn Monroe's going to make an appearance at the guys in Korea. I don't know. But that was a good thing about writing for Norman shows. We always felt that we were doing relevant stuff and stuff that would hold up. I remember, I would say to Mike, my partner, these shows are going to be around. He'd say, no, we're just writing them now, though. But
no,
it's amazing to me, Jeffersons is relevant now thanks to Norman and Jimmy Kimmel. They're doing the Jeffersons and Good Times and All in the Family. It's,
So I hear Nancy back there. So before we move on to more showbiz stories, so you guys are grown-ups in love. What do you call each other? Because we have this conversation every day on my show. The whole idea of boyfriend, girlfriend, what do you call each other?
Well, I call her my one and only, or my better half,
Okay. And what does Nancy?
Those seem to work so far. I don't.
And what does Nancy call you?
What do you call me?
My partner.
Let her get on camera. So
No. My partner in crime.
Nancy, come stick your head in for a second. Come on. Everybody, I love her so much. And
I love you more. Anyway, He's the best. He's my lover.
This is why I started writing the book. I credit her as my muse in the book. And she, when we first met, she said, "I don't even know who you are." And I started thinking, who am I anyway? And so I decided, I knew she had a thing for writers. So I thought, I'll write a book and write who I am. And as long as I keep writing, maybe she'll stay with me. So it took me almost 3 years. She goes, you're still not finished? Aren't you finished yet? So I figured I better finish it. But anyway, that's the problem. What do you guys call each other?
I call him my boyfriend. If he was my boyfriend, it just seems so juvenile and wrong for a middle-aged person. I haven't found the right word. Beau doesn't. I don't know. Guy. I don't know. It's awkward. It's weird. I don't know.
When you're going to introduce your girlfriend to your grandkids when you're my age, that's hey, my grandkids. This is my girlfriend.
You see a lot of eyes rolling, I'm sure. All right.
Yeah. Well, of course, they all love Nancy.
I'm at Phil Rosenthal's movie night.
We've been together just about 5 years, and since we met, I've always been waiting for 5 years. I wanted to wait because then it feels like a real, I mean, in LA, really, it's 2 years is common law, but 5 years, you really.
Wait a minute, I heard LA, there is no common law in LA, actually. Cindy, who told me there was no common law in LA, Cindy Peak.
Well, that was a joke. I mean, in 2 years, but it's like 2 months here. I don't know.
Yeah. So Cindy I just noticed she put up a question and she said, do you have any Maud stories for us?
Well, we had great meetings all in the book about when we first met. I don't know if you know Schiller and Weisskopf, but those guys are legendary writers. And we pitched an idea called Vivs about, once again, on the cover of Time magazine, a picture of a dog. And it was about pet funerals, and how people get carried away and have these elaborate pet funerals. So we pitched this idea to Schiller and Weisskopf, but they turned it around and everything, which you hope, when you go in to pitch a story, you want to hear, you're trying to interest them. And if they are interested in any of it, if they say something like, well, we might have something here, that's like a writer, this sounds great. So we came out with this story where Maud is watching Viv's dog and the dog dies while Viv's out of town. So anyway, Mike and I wrote the story. Rod Parker, who was producing the show, he cut us off at story. You can get cut off after story. And he had Charlie Haupt, who was on staff, write the show. So I don't have any great stories, although Schiller and Weisskopf felt so bad. They felt like we did. This is the best story I know we ever write. We get cut off and somebody else writes it. But they said when they went to Israel to speak, they took the Viv's dog story with them. That's the one they showed to the people in Israel. But
sweet. And actually, your girlfriend or your a better half or whatever you want to call her, she's somebody that could go over the top for a pet funeral, couldn't she? I mean, I know how much Nancy is attached to, her babies, right? So, yeah. So, So Jay, let's talk about the Jeffersons because this is so much the honky in the house. So how did that happen for you? And what was that initial experience like for you? That was a big responsibility for the honky to be the one leading that brigade there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, we actually, the writers who were on that show it was Nickel, Ross, and Wes, and then Gordon and Lloyd, and then Mike and I. And so there were 5 of us, and we were all white guys. And, I write about that in the book, and I really address it. It's better to read it in the book than they have me talk about it. But, I don't know if you got that far in the book or if you.
I haven't yet. But was there dissension because?
No, there was no dissension on that show.
Mm-hmm.
It was just an ideal show to work for. Good Times was a different story. They were on the same lot, and I would go over and watch Good Times, and everybody, they would all, Jimmy Walker would stand here, and the rest of the cast would stand over there, and there was a lot of friction between, especially between John Amos and Esther Roll and Jimmy. I think, I tried to be real affectionate about it when I wrote it. I mean, it was a great show. It was the first black show on TV.
Mhm.
We were thrilled that it was the first show we wrote. But I think, as I mentioned in the book, I think you had John Amos and Esther Roll, both who were skilled, talented actors, and they were being upstaged by this young kid who was a comedian.
Yeah.
And he was getting the laughs, and but they weren't happy over there. As you know, finally John quit, and that's a whole other story. But on the Jeffersons, you'll read about it. On Jeffersons, everybody loved everybody. It was the greatest show. And, Sherman Hemsley identified with like the lowest guys on the totem pole. So when Mike and I first started there, Sherman would come in our office and sleep on our couch and hang out with us.
Aww.
And his driver, who was David Hoberman, his driver at the time, Hope he'd be looking for Sherman. He'd come in our office and look. David Hobie, by the way, went on to become president of Walt Disney. I don't know if you know David. He was Sherman's driver at the time.
Wow.
Sherman. Well, beautiful thing about Sherman was when we had dinner on tape night, between shows.
Mm-hmm.
First, Sherman would put a plate of food together and take it down to the security guard. I mean, I read it. How can you not love a guy like that?
That's really beautiful.
I don't see anybody.
You also hired women. I mean, Cindy was on your staff, which was.
Well, Cindy was actually didn't meet Sid. She spent a lot of time with Gary Marshall.
Yes,
So
she
we
did.
couldn't get her away from Gary. She loved Gary.
Mhm.
She loved it. And no, Cindy actually we met at a later time. See, Mike and I started on the Jeffersons at the lowest guys. We were assistant story editors, then we became story editors. Eventually, we became producers. And then when Donna, Mickey, and Bernie left to do Three's Company, they made us exec producers. We got their parking spots, which were right outside the Special 5 in front of the building. It was great. So we went through the whole thing. That's kind of the great story of the Jeffersons. And when I write it in the third person, it's like I can enjoy it looking at this kid who starts out, and becomes executive producer of what becomes a #1 show. Well, we did a spinoff. Mike and I wrote a Florence spinoff called Checking In, which is a whole other story, which we write about in there. But that's when we hired Cindy and Lisa Kite on the staff of Checking In. We only did like 4 episodes that were aired. And then I worked with Cindy again when we worked with Cosby in New York. This was in the 90s. And Mike and I were doing Cosby, and we asked Cindy to come and help us out. It was a spinoff of Cosby with Malcolm Jamal Warner.
Mm-hmm.
Cindy probably remembers more about that show than I do.
I'm sure she does. Cindy said that to ask you about the story about her meeting Cosby, because she said your stories are divergent. Yours is probably correct. So
mine is correct, I'm sure. That's like the one thing I remember. I remember Cindy came over. It was great to see her, and Cos happened to be on the set. And, we were doing a rehearsal, and so I thought, I'll impress Cindy. I'll introduce her to Cosby. No, but I introduced her to Cosby, and I said, this is a new writer, Cindy Beagle. This is Bob Newhart, and Cindy and Cos laughed a little. The idea was always to get, if you could get Cos to laugh a little, then you could keep your job. When I first met Cos, Mike and I, we got hired by NBC to go to New York, but we had not met Bill at all. And we're on a stage. We go on a stage, and there's Cosby across the stage, and there's other people, and nobody from NBC is introducing us or anything. So I just went over to Cos and said, I am Jay Moriarty. I'm going to be right and working with you. I'm not sure. Everybody in the office, by the way, would call him Mr. Cosby or Dr. Cosby. All the people that work. I said, I'm not sure what to call you, Dr. Cosby or God. And he said, Bill will be okay.
So Jay, knowing him the way you did, was it surprising when everything came out about him? Were you surprised?
Yeah. Well, I was surprised not about the fact that there were other women, but the drugs are what really surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
And there was really no sign of that. Cosby, in fact, he was great to us. I at the time was even thinking of writing a story about my love affair with Bill Cosby, which would take on a different thing. But Bill, he treated my partner Mike Milligan and I so well. He actually went on when he was on Arsenio at the time and mentioned our names and he didn't mention any writers' names usually,
Wow.
He had a habit of going through writers, but he actually said the only man who ever sent me 24 roses. He sent Mike and I each 24 roses because we wrote this. He pitched us a script that we end up writing, and his driver had said something that made sense when we started. He said, don't listen to anything Bill says unless he says it twice. And so when Bill said something twice, we decided. But Bill was really great to us, and he's a good guy. I grew up, but I was stunned. I think everybody was stunned, weren't they? How did you feel when you heard that about Bill Cosby, or did you hear rumors already? I don't know.
Yeah, I actually met him on the street in New York one day. I was speed walking in front of his house. He was up by the West Side Drive there, and I was walking.
Did you a drink or anything? Or
he was very friendly, actually.
Yeah, I can believe he would be. Yeah, just don't let him get you near.
So that made me a little less surprised. And one of the Playboy playmates who came forward, Victoria Valentino, was somebody that used to come to Women Who Write, and she told her story very passionately, and I believed her. So it was very disappointing. It's very disappointing. It's very disappointing because as a comic, I adored him. So it was very disappointing.
As a comic, and that's one thing that kind of, I think, the hypocrisy really that Bill should, Bill would criticize comics. Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, guys who would use a certain language that he thought, if you're black, you got an image you got to keep your integrity. And he came down on the set one time when Malcolm played a college kid, actually modeled after Bill's son Ennis, who was working with some kids. But he was a college kid. He had a couple college buddies. This was in the show that we're rehearsing. Mm-hmm. And they're going talking like guys, they're talking streaker. Hey, sup, what's up? Cosby hears that, boy, he just blew. He says, what are you guys, college guys? You went to college? You're talking like this? And he was always with the language, and especially if you're black, you have to speak. And then he goes and does, let's talk about keeping up an image. It's the hypocrisy is really. Yeah. Comics. He was outed by a comic. You know that.
Did you not believe it when you first heard about it?
What's that?
Did you not believe the stories when you first heard it?
Well, I didn't believe or disbelieve, but I think what happened is apparently Hannibal Buress mentioned about the rape thing. It's like, don't talk to me about my language. At least I don't rape women or whatever. And when you look it up online, see, that's another thing. I don't think if there was social media, this would have come out the way it did. But people start checking in, and then people start giving their stories, and one thing led to another, and now Bill's in jail and Trump's president.
The world is upside down.
If you had told me 10 years ago that'd be the case, Cos is in jail and Trump is president, I'd say, I'll take that bet.
So, I just read something about him. He's there's something new in his case going on right now. I can't remember right now what it is, but
it's really a shame. It's so sad, and I think if Bill, I don't know, what do I know? But if I were Bill, if Bill would have laid himself and say, you know what, I screwed up, I made a mistake, I was doing this, I was doing that, I wasn't thinking, and I'm so sorry, people would forgive him. But he still insists, he didn't do anything, and that's not a good place, I don't think.
No, not a good place.
I feel sorry for, his wife and the whole thing, that they have to pretend that they don't know or whatever,
Did your parents live to see your success?
Well, yeah, if you call Producing the Jeffersons success, and Dear John, we worked on Dear John. My parents came out to see that, meet the cast and all that stuff. So, yeah, they basically.
Were they worried for you when you were going to go out to Hollywood to be a writer? I mean, you didn't have any money and.
Oh, yeah. I got married and had no job, and then right out of college. So let's get married and go to California. That's where I want to live, and that's where I had been there once with my family when I was 17. We did it's like out of the Waldens or something. My grandma and everybody packing up suitcases, tying them on the roof, and and going out to California, and the weather was, I was like, why doesn't everybody live here? You know, why don't we live in California? Well, your dad doesn't have a job here. I go, well, when I grew up, I'm getting a job here. So that was the land of milk and honey. But yeah, they were like, probably a lot of guys who do this come out there, right? I was like, my dad was like, you know, if you want you to get a job around here, you know, I can get you a job. I know people. You don't know anybody out there. How are you going to get? But, you know, you got to be crazy. Well, you know, from showbiz, I mean, you must have your story of, you know, and people must have say, what, I want to be an actress. Oh,
well, my mother's still wondering when I'm going to have my success. So we're still having that conversation.
Yeah, I don't think they really ever looked at my thing as a success. My dad wanted me to be a priest. So as long as I wasn't a priest, I really wasn't a success.
Okay. So now I read about that. So now how did you feel about becoming a priest?
Well, I was, you know, when you're young, your nuns are telling you have a vocation. Everybody, that means you got to, you know, God wants you to be a priest. And if you believe all the stuff, you go, well, geez, we're all trying to get to heaven. And I guess if you're a priest, that'd be the best way, right? You get right to heaven. My mom would always say about everything, you know, that if you do this, you'll get a higher place in heaven. You know, oh, I'll get a higher place. But, you know, eventually you get to where you start wondering.
Was it something you seriously considered?
What did I? Well, yeah, at the time, I even, you know, it's kind of crazy. And like I say, when I look back, that's why I could write in the third person, because sometimes I don't know who I was. But when I was a senior in high school, I was actually planning to go into the seminary after high school, and we had to get up and tell the class where we were going to go to college. And I got up and said I was going to seminary, and everybody's laughing the whole time, you know. It started hitting me that, geez, I guess these guys tell me something I know, like there's no way I'm going to make it as a priest. But I was being dead serious. But I said, you know, I tell my girlfriend, and they would laugh. And, yes. But yeah, finally reality, you know, reared its ugly head. And I went to college. I went to Catholic University, the Jesuits. And once I started reading Thomas Aquinas, which tells you why the Catholics believe that, you know, like the Immaculate Conception, you know, and all that kind of stuff, that Mary was conceived by God. And then you start trying to figure all this stuff out, and you go, wait a minute. You find out that there was a Council of Trent, the 7th century. These old guys decided that Mary was a virgin. That's the first time and then you go, wait a minute, something's not right here. I actually went to I did a week at a pre-seminary thing when you know, and I remember coming out, and in the lounge there they had the front page and the sports page of the newspaper. And I was like, where's the rest of the newspaper? And he said, oh, well, you really don't have enough time to only like read the front page and the sports page, so we don't put out I said, well, if you don't have enough time, well, then you won't read it, right? Well, why wouldn't you put it out? And so it started saying like, uh-oh, this is not sounding, it sounded more like a Russian camp or something. So, you know, eventually I realized that's probably not my vocation. But I wanted to write. Even when I wanted to be a priest, I figured I'd be a writing priest, and I figured I could write some funny priest books. I don't know.
Funny priest books. Tony says here, very funny. She said, make people smile and laugh and you'll get to heaven. And I do believe that you've earned your ticket to heaven in a whole different way.
That's very nice for her to say.
that in a whole different way than you originally intended. So Jay, talk to me a little bit about we're known as the COVID crazies on here. How are you and Nancy handling this whole COVID thing?
Well, you know, Nancy and I are together almost about everything, and we're handling it fine, except she won't let me. She won't watch the news. I have to watch the news in a separate room. She won't watch Trump. She don't want to see him. And I think he's funny. I think it's a funny show. I got to every day I go, what did he say today? You know, it's like, this is crazy. This is like watching a movie. You know, you can't believe it. The things he says something and he doubles down on them. It's like how could you, you know? But you know, we both know how we're going to vote, and I can't see how he's going to get reelected. I figured you must, I don't know, I'm curious what you might think of him or whatever, but.
Oh, I call him the idiot in chief. I refuse to say his name. I'm like Nancy. I don't want to watch, although I do listen to some of the things. It's just mind-blowing, his rationale for things. You know, if we have to stop testing because the numbers are going up. I mean,
I know
he really It's like, but what's really scary is that he thinks that that makes sense, is the thing that's so frightening about that to me. I don't
For a
know.
long time I was thinking, I don't know, is this guy really a smart guy and he knows what he's doing and he's got a strategy? And now I just think he's a total idiot.
No, I think he's a total buffoon. So do you guys, what do you guys do about groceries? Do you go to the store? Do you order groceries? How do you handle groceries?
Nancy's in charge of it. Yeah, we go to the store, we go to Nancy's favorite store, Gelson's, where the line's a little smaller, but you still got to wait in line. Although there's it's nice to be a little older. You got a senior time in the morning now. And, but we always wear masks and,
How do you feel about the mask wearing? What about all these people that are complaining about mask wearing?
You must have seen the gal in Trader Joe's, right? That was right up here who refused to wear a mask.
Tell her we don't want to be mask holes.
Nancy says we don't want to be mask holes, so she's trying to get some comedy into this.
Mask hole.
I know, it only makes sense to wear. I try to wear gloves too if I know I'm going to touch stuff, because I don't want to give it to any of my kids or grandkids or anybody that I see. We basically, like you mentioned Hermosa, we go down to see most of my kids and grandkids. We stay distance and wear masks.
I was going to ask you about that. How do you handle the grandkids and everything, and how do you
handle them? I mean, of course, my grandkids now, one's in high school and one's freshman in college, so they're smart and they wear masks, and we don't do stupid things.
You socially distance? Do you go in the house?
No, not in there. I have a house right there, and then their house is next door, so they're in their house, and we go out on the patio and we'll talk. But I don't know if you know the South Bay beaches. They're closed again now. For a while, they closed the beach, and then they opened it over Memorial Weekend. It was full of people wearing no masks.
They've just changed a lot of the laws in LA in the last day, in the last 24 hours. They're closing bars. Their restaurants are not going to be able to serve indoors. Movie theaters. My son is a general manager of a movie theater. They're not going to open. They just said no gatherings of people that aren't in your family, which is your bubble that you live with. They're stopping that again. But it's so crazy to me because Newsom was so wonderful at the beginning. He shut us down right away. He got the numbers down, and then California went crazy again. What happened?
Well, I wish I knew. You pointed out something that is a mystery to me. I don't know. He seemed like he knew what he was doing, and then he stopped. And now it's gone crazy.
It's gone absolutely
crazy.
He's
wised up, hasn't he? It seems like he's going to put a hold on this stuff now again.
I think we really need another shelter-in-place order because people are I think people got.
Are people going to go along with that? That's the thing. You see these crazy people that say, I want my freedom. I want to. You can't make me wear a mask. I mean, that they don't wear seatbelts, or what? What do they think? It's this. Who is this? Who is this for? It's for you. And it's like, well, I'm not going to wear a mask. Well, one of the representatives, guy from Texas, wherever he's from, said, I'm not wearing a mask until I get COVID. I mean, well, it's a little bit late if you're. I mean, it's no sense at all. I assume you do too. Wear your mask.
Yeah, okay, so how is it in your neighborhood? Because in I'm in a sleepy little town, and I go out for a speed walk, and nobody's wearing masks. I go to this little park in Hollywood. They're not wearing masks.
Are they talking together? Are they 6 feet apart at least?
They're not really observing socially distance very well. No.
You bring up a good point. I've said a couple things like in our neighborhood. If I see some, I'd say no mask, huh? And they'd say no. Or I don't take it any further than that because I figure actually this is basically Nancy's neighborhood, and I don't want to get any fights with any. But how stupid can you be? But when you go to the stores, especially grocery, I've seen everybody has a mask on, and everybody's like staying, not too close to the other. I don't know if you noticed that.
I haven't been in a store in 4 months.
Or you just get your stuff delivered to you?
I get everything delivered, and that's a compromise, quite a bit of a compromise. But yeah, it's just a decision that I made. I told you I'm crazy. I haven't let my son in my house. My boyfriend bought me full-size body bags, plastic body bags, head to toe, so that I could hug him and my son.
Oh, wow. Well, that's nice. The lady's very thoughtful. Nancy is going to the store. She has to squeeze her own peaches and pick out her own bananas. They have to be just a certain shade and everything. So.
The fruit is a big problem when you have somebody else doing your shopping. Not good. I throw a lot of stuff away. Not a good thing. So Jay, tell us, there's another part of your personality that I think is, I know that you're a poker player. We'll get into all of that, but you've created a board game, a Sherlock Holmes board game. How did that come to be?
Well, that was, before, while I'm thinking about it, I just saw Salima Nimoy, who's a writer. This is a book you would love. I don't recommend books to people usually. This is a book about our age group, I mean, if you remember Motown and the 60s and 70s, there's a book that just came out. Salima wrote it. It's called Since I Lost My Baby. It's based on a true story. She was actually on Oprah telling about, she got pregnant, the baby was taken from her. In those days, you gave up your babies, you couldn't get abortion. But the writing is just unbelievable. I mean, as a writer, I was blown away, and I think you'd enjoy. I know you got your books there and everything. It's called Since I Lost My Baby by Salima Nimoy, and it just out on Amazon. I just do a little promo for it because I love it so much. You can go to anywhere in a book and just start reading, and the words are it's just so well written. And you just can't stop. You got to go to. But anyway, the Baker Street game, that's before I started writing TV, one of the things I got into creating some board games, and
how did that happen? Where did that come from?
Well, when I was a kid, I used to play, board games all the time. But there was basically Psychology Today did a series of topical board games. They had a board game called Blacks and Whites, where you could play either as black or white in the city. And there were topical games in Psychology Today, and I thought that was kind of clever.
Wow.
And I did a game called Beat Detroit that was kind of a spoof on games, but it was about planned obsolescence, where you start with a new car and you get warranty coupons, which turn out to be good for nothing. And if you can go 50,000 miles before you go broke or your car falls apart, you beat Detroit. And that it was just kind of a joke thing, but it became a bestseller on, the Detroit. It was on the front page of the Detroit News, the nightly news, NBC did a little thing. It was good for news doing a little joke thing at the end, because that's when recalls were happening. Recalls were all over, like in 72 and stuff. So then games companies started asking me, hey, you got any other games? And I ended up doing 9 board games. But one of them was the Sherlock Holmes game. The company said to me, we'd like to do a detective game. You got any detective games? So I thought, who's the best, the most famous detective? Sherlock Holmes. My name happened to be Moriarty, and Moriarty's big. That was just coincidence. When I was a kid, people would say, oh, Professor Moriarty. I didn't know what they were talking about. But anyway, I did this game, Sherlock Holmes, did 20 cases. It was like Clue. When I was a kid, I played Clue, and I always figured at the time I was playing Clue, how come it's always somebody's killed, it's Mr. Green in the ballroom with a rope, or what was the motive? Why did he kill him?
Right.
You could do a game where you'd actually have a motive, and it wasn't just a murder. Maybe it was insurance fraud, but you'd have a reason. But the thing is that, so I wrote these cases, but once you solve them, you know the case, so you can't really play it again. You already know the solution. So I figured, well, you 20 of them. By the time you play 20, you're going to put the game on a shelf, and you'll never see it again anyway. The first call we got was from the Playboy Bunnies, who said, this is Hef's favorite game. We all play it. Where can we get more cases?
Wow.
We figured, geez, we don't want bunnies to get their panties in a twist, so we wrote 20 more pages. And eventually it got up to just now. It did a couple of years ago. Put out a deluxe version, 200 cases. So we would sell these extra cases, and you buy the game, and then you'd buy set number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 10. Where we got 200. Now there's a deluxe version. If you go on Amazon, you'll see the deluxe version and the original version of 221B Baker Street. The new version's all newly designed, but it's selling in 6 different countries. It's translated into the latest one was Romania. It's translated into Romanian, into Portuguese in Brazil, and it's a big seller in the UK and England. Sherlock Holmes.
Wow.
So it's that the other games kind of go 2-3 years. Did a game with Dr. Lawrence Peter called the Peter Principle game, and got to meet him. But yeah, this Baker Street game just goes on because Sherlock Holmes, you'll have TV series, there's usually always a TV series or a movie or something to keep Sherlock Holmes alive.
I wonder if people are playing more board games now that there's the stay at home.
Well, we hope so. That's what I hope. People are reading books and playing board games. But yeah, that's in Ohio, you got bad weather a lot of time, and you stay inside and you play games. Everybody has a basement because you got to have a place to go down and.
Right.
There are no basements. Have you ever seen a basement in California?
No.
You got basements. The weather's too nice. They're outside. They got backyard or a pool or whatever.
Actually,
you grew up in California, by the way, or
yeah, in New York. In New York, yeah.
Yeah, everybody's from New York.
And,
Are you from the city? Did you grow up in the city? Yeah.
I grew up in the Bronx and in Queens.
Oh, that's where Nancy was born, in the Bronx.
Yep.
Yeah.
I lived in Manhattan for about 30 years or something. But yeah, but I was just going to say, my son and his friends, my son's 26, and he and his roommates and everything, they play board games all the time. That's what they do.
Big deal now. Board games are really big. In the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, there's actually places where, like the Game House in Glendale, where people just go and play board games. But in Europe, it's really taken off in Europe. I've been over. They have in Essen, Germany, what they call the Essence-Spiel, whatever. Once a year, 300,000 people from all over the world playing board games.
Oh my God!
It's a big thing. You would think that kids be playing games on their phone or their computers or whatever, sit around playing board games, and big deal.
Tova just said it would be great to have a COVID crazy board game. Land on a spot and you get extra plastic. It's actually, Jay, how much do you think?
You could have masks in there and everything.
Well, how much do you think this is a pretty big thing going on? And so we can't ignore it. Movies are going to have to acknowledge the fact that this is part of now our history, right? Television shows are going to have to incorporate the virus. So how much do you think this is going to impact artistic culture moving forward? Do you think it will?
Yeah, it's going to change the world. I think. I said to Nancy, this is the future. You and I talking distance, ordinarily I'd be at your house or whatever.
Right.
And this is the Zoom thing. Everybody's on Zoom now. I haven't quite figured out how to do it because I got my IT expert here to show me. But everybody's going to know how to do this. You'll all have Zoom. You'll meetings. Why get in your car, spend gas money, look for a parking place, deal with traffic when you can just have your meeting on Zoom?
Do you think that's? I think on the one hand, we're going to be so hungry to interact again that once we're able to, we're going to want to leave our homes on the one hand. But on the other hand, no traffic, no gas, no pants.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you're going to eventually be able to go places. And of course, if you want to go to a nightclub or something, you're going to have to go out and meet people. But there will be things like meetings and like offices. If mainly your office is a place to have meetings, you don't need an office anymore.
Right.
You just go on. There's a lot of things you could do. Doctors love it. I have friends who are doctors. It's like, this is great teleconferencing. People come to them for every little thing.
Right.
A lot of they can just handle it. Oh yeah, take 3 of these pills, or I'll write you a prescription and let me know. Let me hear you cough. There's some things you got to be in person for, but a lot of it you can do just like this, and it's easy for the doctor.
Interesting.
It's easy for a lot of us. I'm working doing things every day, but you don't have to go. You get out, you roll out of bed, you do something, then you're a little tired, you go back to bed, then you get out and do it. It's like everything's different.
It is.
There are a lot of people who are, whether you're working at Staples Center and you want the Lakers to come back or wherever, a lot of jobs are changing. But then again, there are other jobs like my grandson, DoorDash, delivering food and stuff now is a big deal. Everybody wants their food delivered, and I don't know. How's your kids feel about this COVID thing? They're coping okay?
Well, my kids both lost their jobs, at least temporarily. My son is the general manager of a movie theater. My daughter had just become a bartender at Tribeca Grill in New York, and everything's closed. So they're getting good unemployment, and they're fine with it right now. But when the government takes back that $600 a week, they're not going to be too happy being on unemployment. So I think they'll be happy to go back to work at that point.
It will just change because you have tools, technical tools that you're just learning how to use, and people are going to figure out, brilliant minds who are out there now, young people, old people, whatever, are going to figure out ways to use these kind of technical things that we have access to now, phones that are computers, and whoever thought you'd be carrying around a phone where you can
is monetizing. It's like, I can do this. I can't do my literary salon. I might be able to switch it to online, but there's no way to really monetize it online. People are putting tip jars and stuff like that, virtual tip jars.
You got to start charging to go on there and stuff. That's what people will do. I think it'll make sense.
Yeah, but it's hard because there's so much available now. Everybody's doing concerts online, right? Everybody's doing stuff. Everybody's got a podcast because they're not doing anything else. So it's going to be it's tricky. Like, I know you're an avid. How do you feel about sports being played again? Are you a sports fan?
Yeah, in fact, Nancy's really gotten into the Clippers, and I'm into Lakers, and so we had season tickets for both of them, and we were looking forward to Clippers and Lakers, matching each other, and all of a sudden now there's no Clipper games, Laker games, or any games. So that's kind of but I guess they're talking about starting up. I mean, everything is changing, but when you look at it, as I'm sure you do, this is a life or death thing. We've never experienced. I mean, who do you know that would, if you could go to a Laker game or something, would you go? I guess there are people out there who would, and they're talking about baseball. And Dodger fans want to go back. I mean, would you want to sit? There's no social distancing. I don't understand why people would do that.
And he believes this is a total mistake with baseball. He's convinced that as soon as they start playing, they're all going to get sick and it's going to be over very, very quickly. How could it not? With them on top of each other like that? I don't know. I don't see how that can work.
Just to say, I saw Dr. Fauci said, we're liable not to have a vaccine for a couple of years. You can't get too. So
I heard him say not until the new year. God, I hope it's not a couple years. Oh God, I hope. I can't even think about that. One day at a time, I think. So, as a poker player, would you play cards?
No, that's unfortunate, because that's like the last thing you'd want to do, because you're handling cards, you're handling chips that everybody else is handling. I understand in Vegas there are very few casinos that are open right now. They do have poker, and one thing they do is wash their chips every 2 hours, like all the chips are washed. Well, I don't know if that's, every 2 hours. You still got cards. I guess they're washing cards. But you got people at the table, and
crazy.
And I understand some people wear masks and some people don't. Well, that's like the worst thing you could be doing. But I just saw where American Airlines is full planes now.
The
reason is you can't social distance on a plane. Well, don't fly them, but
Delta Airlines, 500 employees COVID positive and 10 deaths. Delta Airlines, and I saw a picture on an airplane. I don't know which airline it was, but they were sitting every seat. They were not keeping middle seats open, and a guy with a Make America Great Again hat on had his mask over his eyes, and the hat kind of says it all. So I don't know how people can fly. I think that's absolutely insane, but people are making these choices. I don't really understand it. So how, I didn't ask Nancy when she was on briefly, how is WeSpark operational with
here she can tell you, but they're operating, they have programs online now. They have a brand new office now that they have it as a building. I mean, it's wonderful. It was all remodeled, this brand new place that they rented, and they haven't even had a chance to move into it yet. But here, you want to answer your
tell us, because I want everybody out there to know about WeSpark. Tell us, give us the cliff notes of WeSpark so people can be supported.
So WeSpark is a nonprofit 501c3 that offers free services for cancer patients and their families. And what it does is the programs are of course support groups, but then a number of programs that help alleviate the physical and emotional side effects of a cancer diagnosis. So, part of that is a community and being together, and, people really miss it, but we pretty quickly got things up and running online, and everybody was nervous about it, but now they love it. And, the cancer patients want to know that we're going to keep on doing this.
Right.
People who are doing cancer solo, which is one group, and the bereavement groups want to meet in person. But, we can't, they want to get together, they're lonely. And, but for now, we can't. It's just not it's just not possible. But we have a lot of great things online, and we're adding more this month. So very exciting. And like I said, we have this gorgeous office that we were waiting for that was designed. Oh my God, it's so gorgeous. Every day I'd go into work and I go, oh my God, this is paradise. I love it. We opened, and literally 3 weeks later, I came in, a new employee was starting. I said, sorry, we're closed in the office. But anyway, we'll be, people are getting services, and that's what matters. And we do as much as we can, So
a bunch of your friends are on right now. Marlene is saying, Jay's book is great. I love Jay's book. And Beth Grant is on saying hi. Yes, WeSpark. Marlene just put the link for WeSpark on the.
Of course she did. She's a development director.
So Jay,
Nancy's got a bunch of friends. You see, they've been good book supporters. All our friends.
It's wonderful. Cindy asked, what shows do you like that are on the air now?
Who's asking? Cindy Beagle?
Yeah.
I think Curb Your Enthusiasm is hilarious. And, certainly Modern Family was a terrific show. That's not on. But now, you've got, what Nancy and I watched, of course, was Fleabag. When we discovered Fleabag, that was great. There's also a show called Catastrophe.
I love Catastrophe.
I'd recommend Catastrophe and Fleabag. But television, I think, is great now. It's a whole different thing. When I was doing TV, there were 3 stations. That was it, And eventually Fox came along, so you got 4. But now there's so many choices in Netflix and Hulu, and you're discovering new shows like the McMillions. Have you seen McMillions?
I haven't.
It's a documentary, and it's like, what is it, 10 episodes or something? Yeah. Somebody told me about it. It's about the McDonald's, the Monopoly game at McDonald's. They had this Monopoly thing, and then they found out somebody was getting the answers and giving them to people they knew. It's fascinating. The FBI gets involved.
Wow.
Nancy didn't want anything. I said, it's McMillions. What? And I said, watch 10 minutes of it. Let's see. We watched 10 minutes, and we're watching second one, third one. It's really fascinating. It's funny, and it's real, and it's
the show. Basically, the first show, you fall in love with the one guy who starts to tell the stories. This young FBI guy. He's so cute and so funny, and so he thinks he's really funny. Laughs at himself all the time. But they always leave you the cliffhanger, and you get a big fish hook in your mouth. But you can't write these characters. These characters like out of I don't know what, The Sopranos or this or that. You have to see it. I'm telling you, you love it. It's really cool.
Not true. It's really.
I think it's on Netflix now. It was originally on HBO, but I think it's on Netflix now. But you'll love it. It's really cool.
What are you binging now?
No, we finished already. Yeah, we had to see every episode. So.
What are you binging now?
I'm diving into season 2 of The Politician.
My kids said season 2 was so much better than season 1. I couldn't get through season 1.
I loved it. It really hooked me. And anyway, I'm going in for 2.
They loved 2. They said 2 was great.
It was unorthodox. What was it called? Unorthodox.
I just binged Stitzel, however you say what Scheisel.
Oh yeah, the other one.
The second one I watched Unorthodox, and then I watched Scheisel. I cried when it was over. I missed them so much. I'm now binging Friday Night Lights. Did you ever watch Friday Night Lights?
No, but I want to see it.
I got to tell you, I stay up all night long every night. I can't turn it off. It is so good.
It's great escape when you get into a show that you really get interested in, like the character.
And it's like cut right from the headlines. I mean, Black Lives Matter. Like they did a lot of very political things, and it's amazing how timely it is.
You mentioned Cindy. Cindy's a sitcom writer. What does Cindy watch? What are good sitcoms today?
Cindy, tell us what you're watching these days. Did you watch Afterlife, by the way?
I watched 2 episodes. Yeah, that was enough for me.
What?
Well, see, I'm not a Ricky Gervais fan, but I loved Afterlife. Loved it.
I think it's a great idea, but isn't it kind of boring after a while? It's like Groundhog Day. Every day he gets up and he's going to kill himself, but not that day.
I think if you go back in and watch it, it was actually wonderful. To me, I think
you like Ricky Gervais and you liked it.
I did, but I love all the shows that you mentioned. I've watched Catastrophe. It's like, oh my God, there's not going to be more. I love Catastrophe. I just, all those shows are fantastic. I'm waiting for The Handmaid's Tale to come back. I heard it's not going to be till next year.
Yeah.
That was another great one. Well, all right, Jay. So I've kept you way longer than I promised, but thank you so much for doing this. It was lovely to get to know you. We've sat at a couple of events and at a couple parties, but I've never really talked to you before. So it was really nice to have a chance.
It was a real honor to be on your show and to talk to you and meet you. And yeah, I'm sure you've got some. I'm interested in your past and your acting, and you're a book writer too. I should be interviewing you. And I look forward to seeing you. Well, maybe I won't see it till I see you online again. But
well,
right. We together at a Valentine party or something. That those things may not be happening for a while, especially the singing part. And then when you got to sing and
I know.
Yes.
To go into another person's house. Cindy says she watched The Handmaid's Tale for comedy, Curb, and Dead Like Me.
Me too.
Yes.
Those are women's shows. Those are all women's shows.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jay. And
thank you for inviting us.
For everybody out there, Jay's book, Honky in the House, and it's available on Amazon. And where can they get your Baker Street game? Is that on Amazon as well?
Amazon. That's on Amazon too. Yeah, everything's online now these days.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys so much. Nancy, I want you back on because a lot of the COVID crazies weren't around when we did our interview 2 years ago.
Well, as it turns out, everyone's very available.
You could get on to talk about Handmaid's Tale and that kind of thing. What are people binging these days? I don't know. Maybe you've already done that, but that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, well, that's part of the daily conversation. What we're watching, because it keeps us going, right? What else?
I haven't, shooting the shit with Vicki. I've turned on whenever I turn on, go through with my TV. Somehow it jumps up there, but I never watch the whole thing. Is that something I should watch? Is that for guys too?
Yeah, we have a number of guys.
You want to shoot the shit with women. So
we have a number of guys that shoot the shit with us. All we're doing basically is staying connected, and that's what it's all about: is staying human, staying connected. The conversation is so important to continue because it's too easy to get really. Some of us are alone through this, and it's a way to stay connected. So, and this was a great way. And thank you so much. And I look forward to the day when we can do a Women Who Write and have you in the living room, and the women will be able to ask you questions live, men too. And maybe we'll figure out a way technologically to do that while we're still in stay at home. But thank you so much, Jay. Nancy, I love you.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Everybody, I will see all of you tomorrow on Shooting the Shit. And don't forget to get Jay's book, Honky in the House, and check out Baker Street, the board game. And thanks again, Jay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.